In the last video, we talked about where to find amazing agencies and freelancers to hire to then manage your growth marketing. In this video, we'll make sure you don't end up making a bad deal and massively overpaying for whoever you end up hiring. So welcome to the agency or freelancer pricing guide. Now specifically status 2025, right? So we're using today's data in the market in publicly accessible sources and what we see running and operating at Amigo.ai, the AI agent for meta ads. Now, this pricing guide is very much focused on agency and freelance services, focused on meta ads, just because that's where we have disproportionate amounts of expertise. However, if you want to hire an agent for Google ads or TikTok ads, the pricing tends to be rather similar. Also, some of the pricing models are percentage of ad spend, for example. So if you now plug in more advertising channels, it's still just the percentage of ad spend, but now across all the channels, right? Why does this pricing guide matter? Why do you have to watch or should watch this video? There is very little transparency in the market on what are normal fees for agencies out there, and it's very beneficial for folks obviously to have that limited transparency, because then you can price better, and ultimately every dollar you pay an agency or freelancer are dollars you don't spend on the advertising channels, so you get less learning, and also it puts tremendous ROI pressure on you and the agency that you hire, right? The more you pay towards the agency or freelancer, the better they need to perform to justify that cost, right? So it just matters that you understand kind of that this is part of the entire cost that you have to spend on running ads, and you have to measure profitability against that. Also, we see a big shift towards sort of hiring your media buyers or agency on a global scale in South America or Latin America or in Southeast Asia, and so that introduces more layers to the pricing dynamic nowadays. Now let's have first a quick overview or a cheat sheet where I summarized all the pros and cons and different pricing models. Now let's quickly talk about the different pricing models and what do you need to expect to be paying in those different pricing models, and then let's dive into the pros and cons and what pricing model is best for your case. The first and most popular one is just a flat retainer, right? So at the moment you're paying in the US and Canada and Europe. That's the benchmark that I've used, and further down I have guidelines on how the pricing might change depending on different markets you're hiring in. But in the US, Canada and European benchmarks, we're dealing with $1,500 all the way up to $5,000 a month for a full service agency. Now that I wrote here mid-market, right? I expect that I'm not talking right now to the chief marketing officer of Coca-Cola. I might be wrong, but in the mid-market segment, that's the price ranges you are dealing with. Obviously, the United States tends to be on the higher end, and Europe tends to be a little bit towards the lower end, so 1,500 to 2,500. The next model is percentage of ad spend. It's sort of waning in popularity. It's becoming less and less popular, I have to say. Flat retainer tends to be the typical starting agreement. And then for some businesses who are in hyper scaling mode, a percentage of ad spend can be a very valid approach. So there, typically you pay 5 to 15% of the ad spend that you're spending. So if you're spending $10,000, you charge 10%. The agency charges 10%. You'll have an additional $1,000 that you have to pay to the agency for managing that $10,000, right? And then freelancers tend to be a little bit cheaper than that. 3 to 10% is the global average based on our data sets that we have from Clutchco, Upwork, and our internal data sources at Amigo.ai. Then you have performance based. So there you have a percentage of revenue or profit, or if you're in the cost per lead space, a fixed dollar amount. So if you want leads, let's say at $50 a lead, then you can basically say, look, I'll pay you $50 a lead. If you can generate them at a lower cost, then you keep the difference and stuff like that. But this is complicated to execute, and we'll talk about it, but there's all kinds of ways you can screw this up. Performance based is I would say, one of the best ways to compensate, but you really need to know what you're doing, and you need to constantly challenge it, and to really get it right. But if you get it right, it's magical. Right. And then a hybrid, base plus performance. So you say, hey, look, I'll pay you a fixed, or I pay you a percentage of revenue share. And if that percentage of revenue share is below $1,200, then that's what we'll pay you. Like, you will always walk away with $1,200 a month. But if you put in the extra work and get amazing outcome, you will get more than that. Very fair deal for all parties involved, I would say. And then you still have freelancer, so that's hourly agreements. That can be a good way to start, and then discuss, if you hire someone on an hourly agreement, if they can switch on over to a fixed retainer once demand for their work goes up. But we'll talk about it. Now, all the costs that I mentioned here, 15 to 40, all these costs, obviously they're very broad ranges. That's because I'm also looking into Europe. Europe tends to be a little bit cheaper than on the US side. However, it also varies based on skill set and a track record and these kinds of things. And then you have the region, which is another factor. It can be very attractive and more common than you would think that you go into, for example, the Philippines, which is a very common market where people find media buying talent, and then you see the cost factor goes down, to just being 30%. Or with a 40% discount on the prices that I've mentioned right here. So you can pause the video, you can take a quick snapshot and look into all the different options. The key things to look for here, I think, would be time zone. To me, it's incredibly important that the person you're working with is reachable, and you can talk to them, you can discuss things with them, you can integrate them into your company culture. And so time zone to me is a big one. So I probably would be okay paying extra if that person is in a time zone that is very much accessible to me. Yes, but this is very common, and we'll talk about it where this is becoming very important when you hire, as well. Good. So let's talk about the compensation models and the pros and cons, right? Okay, so the flat retainer, should you go for a flat retainer? Yes or no? The pro is it's very much predictable, right? You'll have a fixed retainer, and that's what you pay every single month, and it doesn't go up or down. It's very predictable, and therefore maybe less stressful, right? And you can make sure in your business situation, will I be able to sustain that fee over the next couple of months? Make sure or understand that you always have to add media spend on top of that. You'll always have spend on Facebook and Google and other advertising channels on top of what you're paying here for the agency to manage that spend, right? And then, yeah, you can easily benchmark agencies against each other to kind of understand which one is more price to value, has the best, most competitive rate. Maybe less important, but yes, this is another pro. The con is incentives can drift towards good enough. That's a big one. Not in the beginning, not in the first 2, 3, 4 months, because what an agency will obsess with normally, right, is retaining you, making sure that things go well in the beginning, they make you happy, and that they retain you as a client. So in the first 3 to 4 months, you'll see very much tons of attention on your account and in that relationship that you're building. Once the account stabilizes in performance and you seem happy, you might see that attention waning over time, right? There's a lot of other clients they take care of, and the fixed retainer is sort of incentivized to minimize effort without losing you, right? And then it's most profitable for them. That's the big problem with the retainer. All right, so that's a big con to keep in mind. In terms of negotiation, you can tie the renewal to specific KPIs, so you can very much put a performance incentive in place. And so you still have the retainer, but you keep them on their toes to ensure certain performance outcomes. It's risky because sometimes it's not that black and white. There's seasonality in almost every business. There's seasonality in advertising. So a month to month might be a little bit too strict here. A quarter to quarter might be a good middle ground to go for, right? And then, of course, you can always revisit the fees if performances are bad. It's certainly something you can think about. No? Then percentage of ad spend. What are the pros? If the agency optimizes and unlocks scale, then both a win, right? So meaning like, hey, if I'm happy with the results, you can scale spend, so I get more of those results, and then you also make more money. If you can create that scenario, it's a very great agreement to reach. Um, the negative is that it obviously puts a bias towards more spend, right? I just want to spend more. And this can drastically backfire if you don't have a clear understanding of the performance you're getting from that advertising, right? And if you and the agency don't have a clear agreement when to scale budgets based on certain performance benchmarks, and when you don't have transparency into what performance is actually like right now, right? So this already shows you need a certain level of sophistication to understand what's the performance like. I give you an example. Meta ads, they have what's called an attribution window, or an attribution model. So that means when someone saw your ad, the default is 7-day click, 1-day view. So if someone saw your ad, they just looked at it today, 1-day view, right? And they purchase the product, then the Facebook will show that sale in their dashboard. It looks like, okay, Facebook generated that sale. If they saw your ad 2 days ago and buy today, then it wouldn't show because the 1-day view attribution window has passed, right? If they clicked on your ad in the last 7 days and buy, it'll show in the ads as well, right? Now, what can happen is when you already advertise very actively on Google and Pinterest, and you have tons of organic and you have tons of influencers shouting you out and all these kinds of activity that is going on, I could theoretically launch a Facebook ad campaign or an audience, have the view attribution enabled, retarget the heck out of all your social media engagers and website visitors, and then just because they scroll past the ad on Instagram and Facebook, it's a view, and therefore if somebody now buys, it gets attributed to Facebook, and you'll think I'm achieving amazing results, and so we scale, and so I make more money, right? So that's where things get tricky, right? And you have to figure out what's the true performance impact. So you can use attribution tools like triplewhale.com. You can use tools like Hyros or RedTrack, or Northbeam. There's a lot of tools out there for attribution and tracking to show you sort of true sales and revenue from the individual channels. And then you need to set a benchmark. Hey, so this is the true revenue I see in the dashboard I trust, and I need you to spend no more than this to generate this. So I need an ROI, right, of a certain benchmark. I need an ROI of 2.5. So in every dollar you spend, I want to see in that dashboard, in that row, a $2.5 in revenue. Only then you're allowed to scale budgets. And I want you to let me know every time you increase daily budgets, every time, so I have a clear understanding of what's the current daily budget like, right? Then you can reach an agreement on percentage of ad spend. Now, the performance based, fantastic if you get it right. No, so it directly aligns with you and the agency, with your bottom line in theory, right? So you can have a revenue share, so percentage of net revenue attributed to Meta. So again, you have that dashboard that you trust. It can be also on Meta, obviously, right? The data. It can be on Shopify. You need some source of truth. I can record an entire video on that as well. So if you want me to do that, just drop a comment below and I'll record a video quick. I record these videos quick, on how to establish that source of truth and really understand what every advertising channel contributes to your revenue, and then use that to compensate your agency. So just write a comment and I'll drop that video quick. You can make it based on the CPL, right? So if you say like, hey, if you generate me leads below $50, you can keep the difference, or you'll get a $5 per lead. It's risky though, again, because cheap leads sometimes means bad quality. So you always need to tie it to a conversion rate metric or something else to measure quality, right? Fantastic. Now the cons: requires bulletproof attribution, right? You need to be able to trust or set a common source of truth. What dashboard or in what metric specifically do you and your agency look at to calculate the revenue share, profit share, that you agree upon. Also, make sure if you go for a revenue share, it's risky, right? Because they could be spending way more than they return in revenue on your ads. And then ultimately you're losing money on your ads, plus you have to pay the revenue share. So it really should be more of a profit share, right? So what's the profit after ad spend on Meta? What's the profit that is left, right? And on that, you earn a percentage, right? Of course, factor in costs of goods sold and stuff like that. So, um, fantastic. And then you have the hybrid structure. So there you have, let's say we agree for a performance incentive, so percentage of profit, right? And if that ends up being below 1.2k, I'll pay you the 1.2k. So you'll never go home without anything. So that's important, because if someone is on a performance incentive and you're just starting out, the business is new, product market fit isn't proven out, and there's no way for the media buyer to get to that, to get to some attractive sort of outcome with the performance incentive, they'll start working on the account, obviously, because they're not going to make any money that month. And so you always want to have some sort of base retainer. I would say it's just fair, right? Good. Alrighty. So how to actually structure this, right? Um, Actually, let's first go into some hidden costs, and then let's talk about what's the actual correct model for you, right? So in terms of hidden costs and red flags, make sure that if you hire an agency or even also a freelancer, who will actually manage my account? Who will actually manage my account? And I'll show you how you can check on that. Obviously, you'll ask them. But then once they are operating your account, I'll record another video, and you can drop a comment below if you want that video. I'll record another video to show you how to supervise and overview and monitor and check on your agency and freelancers to make sure that they do the work that they say they're doing, and they're doing good work, and it's them and not someone else, right? Because you're buying them. You're buying the person you're talking to manage your account, and not for them to then outsource it to some media buyer in the Philippines or something, right? And they pocket the difference. And if it doesn't work out, it is what it is, right? So make sure that you actually talk to the person who touches the account and is on their account, and you have a relationship with them, and you're not given any illusions there, right? Then, and this is very important, ensure you own the data, right? This to me is a non-negotiable. There are maybe some scenarios in the lead generation space where you could agree there, but I would always make sure that you own the business manager, you own the ad account, obviously you own the Facebook and Instagram page, and you own the data set slash pixel. And so that when you stop the relationship with the agency, they don't walk away with your pixel that you spend all the advertising dollars for to populate. And so when they run away, you have to start from zero, right? So make sure that's negotiated, and make sure you have access to all those things. You can drop a comment below if you're interested in a video, how to make sure you don't end up getting screwed, right? I can write up an entire video on this as well. Cool. Then also make sure if you pay them in another currency, obviously that currency might change to your currency in value. And so this could make agreements more expensive or less expensive. So try to take that currency risk out of the equation and try to pay them in the currency that you operate in. Yeah. Cool. Alrighty. Now, what's the right model for you? If you're just starting out, I would argue find yourself an amazing freelancer, pay them on a small retainer or hourly. You could argue that hourly might not be a good way to go, because typically people that are worth their salt, they want to have predictability in their life as well, and so they end up wanting a fixed retainer. That's typically the best way to go. Start with a low retainer, start with one advertising channel. Now with AI tools, they can also, in terms of creative and content, they can help you there. So try to bake in some sort of minimum number of creative and content that you can get as well, and then you supply additional content on top. But the entire operation doesn't come to a halt if you don't provide content, right? So this tends to be a great way to get started, and making sure that more money reaches your ad account. If you had to pay now $2,500 a month, that's $1,000 that you cannot spend on your ads, which ultimately is where the value gets created. Obviously, you need someone to manage it, but try to hit the balance there. So small retainer, 1,500 just to get started tends to be a good way. Once you grow, you can figure out a way to get a performance incentive baked in. And you can talk to the person about that. You can make that agreement right from the get-go. Once we surpass $10,000 a monthly ad spend or $8,000 a monthly ad spend, then we will bake in a performance-based incentive. And at that point, you also have clarity on attribution. You kind of know, okay, where do I get my right data? In the Facebook ad account, can I trust the data there? What do we use to operate our business? That once you started the advertising, you will need to figure that out, right? So start with a fixed retainer. And then once you go above a certain spend limit, you can agree, okay, now we'll have an incentive structure in place. There, my ideal is a performance deal. So you figure out a revenue share or some sort of performance incentive, a profit share for the media buyer, then with the minimum retainer, and then they can earn on top of that. Cool. Now, I hope that was helpful. I hope also, obviously, with these values up here, you have like a benchmark. So if you interview an agency or a media buyer, you can kind of know if they're overcharging you or undercharging you. Also based on the location that they're at. Again, this is all real data from Upwork, from Clutch.co, and from our internal resources at amigo.ai. If you say, look, I don't want to go out there, I don't want to hire a person, I want an AI agent to do it for me, then you can look into amigo.ai. It's an AI agent company that I have co-founded with Ahmed, who's an AI genius. And what we do there is we created an autonomous AI agent that creates your ads for you, creates your campaigns for you, and then manages the entire ad account completely on autopilot, all the way down to managing also the comments that you get on your ads to build up social proof, all to drive best possible outcomes on our autopilot, so fully autonomous, or you're in there cross-checking every step before it happens. Our agent is incredibly transparent, so you see everything it wants to do and why it wants to do it, and you can fully adjust it to your needs. So you can further fine-tune the agent to operate the ad account exactly the way you wanted to operate the ad account. So if that's interesting, you can get started with just $99 a month. There's a money back guarantee. You can plug it in within 5 minutes. You're set up, and it will run your ad account completely autonomously for you. Had to get that plug in there. Hope that video was helpful. If you want more information on how to hire the best agency, feel free to write a comment below and I'll record that video ASAP. Thank you so much for watching.